percent. I think it was the plant exam. I felt like I got 80%. And I was so devastated to see 49%. I was, I would be lying if I say I didn't dream of some of these formulas at night, because I did.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Instead of you guys hearing a lot of information from me and from my perspective, I thought it would be useful and, you know what, a lot more value adding if you could hear it from different perspectives and other experiences, especially a lot of the questions that you guys send me, and I may not have the right answers, or I might have a funnel view of some of the answers to those questions because we all have different lived experiences. So I'll ask a lot of the questions that you guys email me, a lot of the questions that you put in the comments, and hopefully we've covered especially the more common ones, the frequently asked questions that you put into Google, and Google doesn't necessarily return back those questions. So Taf is an engineer who's obviously got his own walked or lived experience, and hopefully a lot of the insight and information that he'll share with us can help at least one person. At the end of the day, the main objective of this channel is to try and create somewhat of a ripple effect and close the gaps in information, in education and development for anyone who's needing to or wanting to transform and to grow in their careers. So it won't be a lot of me talking. I'm just going to be the person asking the questions on behalf of everyone. So maybe Tafadzwa, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who's Tafadzwa? Where are you from? And why engineering?
Okay. Hi, Zanele. And well, I think just to give you a short I think background on who I am and how I came to be where I am today. I think I'll have to start with I was born in Zim, and then I did my primary and high school education there. And then after that, I went to study. Well, I did mechanical engineering at the University of Johannesburg. And then I finished my degree. I joined Unilever, I think as a graduate in the supply chain year 4P program. And then I did some time at Unilever where I started off in projects where I was a member of the Unilever. I think they called it at that point, it was Unilever. Okay, I forgot the actual name, but it was some form of a projects team. And then I worked in Boxburg for a while, did 6 months there. I went to Durban where I worked in maintenance. I think that's where most of my background in engineering is based, maintenance. And I think it has made me the kind of person that I am today. And I think even where I'm working now, still in maintenance, and there is a certain part of projects, but I think maintenance is like the core of what I do day in, day out. With regards to how I became an engineer or why I became an engineer, I think some of those things you would hear a lot of people say that they were quite good at taking things apart and putting them back together. For me, I'd say I wasn't so much of a person who was good at taking things apart and putting them together, or at least if I did, I wouldn't be able to put them together in a good way. So yeah, so that was me. But I think one of the things that I actually enjoyed about the course of engineering, I think in high school, what was the fact that I had the opportunity to interact with some of the best things I've ever seen in the world, some of the best man-made features I've ever seen in the world. You could be talking about airplanes, you could be talking about trains, you could be talking something as simple as a ballpoint pen. It has the feel and the touch and the inspiration of a mechanical engineer or any other form of engineer behind it. So that's one of the things that actually inspired me to be an engineer. And I think looking back, I think I made a very, very good decision to join the field, because I can feel that's who I am, when I'm in maintenance, when I'm looking at machines, that's who I am. I feel at home, I feel at ease. Actually, when I'm in the office and I'm facing like a very stressful situation, it could be a people situation, it could be any other situation, but whenever I'm looking for that 2 minutes time off, that 5-minute time off, one thing that I always manage to do, I step out of the office, I go and look at a machine, and suddenly I feel better. So yeah, it tells me that I made the right decision, and day in, day out, I don't regret it at all.
Wow. So maybe one of the questions is around what a typical day looks like, because a lot of subscribers and some of the guys that ask the questions, they're currently in tertiary or currently trying to get trade tests or trying to get their degrees or diplomas. So as someone who's got actual experience, what does a day-to-day look like for you?
Well, I think I would say so. My day, looking at a typical Monday, I start off with a meeting in the morning at 7:30, where it's like a review. So we normally run. It's a production company. It's an FMCG pharmaceutical company. We run Saturdays and Sundays. So on a Monday, we look at the previous week's performance as well as the weekend performance. The preceding Saturday and Sunday, and then we look at the biggest losses in the plant. I would say the top three. And then from that point, we are able to look at the day for the first 3 hours from 7:30, 8:30, 9:30, up to 10:30. We're looking at the first 3 hours of how we're going to be able to tackle the biggest three problems of the day. Then we are able to say, actually, we have seen that the biggest loss from the previous 2 days or from the previous week was this one. This is what we are doing to be able to rectify the situation. It could be a problematic machine that I would say gave production hell the previous week. We come up with the solutions as a team. I have a team of around 11 people, both electrical and mechanical. And then we discuss solutions as a team. And then from that point, we go and implement for the first 3 hours of the day. And then we go through now the proactive phase of the job, which is really looking at our CMMS. I'm not sure if everyone knows what a CMMS is, but that's a computerized maintenance management system. So it could be SAP. In our case, it's a system called Shopware, where we're looking at all our tasks for that day, tasks for that week, and then we distribute them to the various artisans that we have on site. And then they go and implement all of these schedules that are supposed to be tackled for that day. And then I go on from that point while my direct reports are working in the plant, associating with the operators, the machines, tackling all of these schedules. I go on to attend, I would say, some of the more longer term meetings. I would say something like a projects meeting. We have a projects meeting on a Monday where I go in and then we're looking at how are we going to be able to match the coming capacity demands for the next 6 to 12 months. I'm a part of that team as well. And then also look at some of the key, I would say, pillars or key departments that we as engineers are serving, which could be quality or safety. So I also take part in all of these meetings on a Monday. Some of them, they go through the week, so you have Tuesday, Thursday, and Fridays as well, such as safety meetings. So I would say, all in all, that's that. And then you also have some of these, some breakdowns as an example. I normally don't take part in breakdowns unless there's been a serious issue and some of my artisans cannot really get to a root cause within the first 1 hour, 2 hours. Then I get involved to be able to come into a root cause. So after that, we'll go to, I would say, the latter part of the day, where we're looking at updating our stakeholders, because as engineering, you realize very quickly that you don't work in an island. You are mostly, I would say, a service provider to a key function, which is production. Another key functions could be safety, another key functions could be quality, but production is, I would say, our biggest customer. And then from that point, we go to a briefing session where I say, okay, these were the biggest three problems from yesterday or the week before. This is what we have done to be able to counter some of these problems, and this is what we are doing to prevent these problems from coming up again in the next 3 months, 6 months, or whatever. So that's what we do, I would say, on a daily basis.
So what would you say is the toughest or most challenging part of your job?
I'd say it's not really a tough thing, but it's a very difficult concept, especially for many engineers, which is the people part. Okay. Right. So yeah, so one of the things that you come to understand very quickly as you go into it could be any corporate environment, is that there is a big aspect of people interaction, and sometimes as an engineer, you are normally built to only look at the machines. You are normally built to only look at them at the plant in the next year, 2 years, and then you forget a very critical part of who is going to be doing that task in the next year, who is going to be doing that task in the next 2 months, or who else are we serving within the environment that we're working in, and that's the people part. So sometimes you tend to have difficulty in coming up with the proper people strategy. It could be conflict resolution, because if you're working with a number of people, you have people from electrical, that's from my own perspective, you have people from electrical, people from mechanical, we have different personalities, you have people from production, people from quality, all of these have different personalities, and it's your job now to be able to come together, be the glue that holds all of these people together and say, guys, this is the future, this is what we are working towards, which might not always be easy. There could be, as I mentioned, conflict issues between different people of your own teams, as well as people from different departments as well. So it becomes quite, I'd say, a very difficult task if you are not clearly up to the challenge. But I think as you go on, you realize that it becomes a skill. You know, it's not something that you learn in the first year, 2 years, or whatever. But you have to put in the work. You know, it could be working on some people development modules, for example. I did that as part of my MBA. So you start to learn all of these things, and now that comes together for you to be able to be a better leader in maintenance, or even just in general within a corporate environment.
Oh, wow. Thanks for sharing that, because I think, especially with us engineers, you think that the most important part is understanding machines and Newton's laws and first principles, but there's actually another complicated aspect when you introduce the human side and people into the mix. So you mentioned that you're a mechanical engineer. Maybe for those individuals who also want to tackle the mechanical engineering route, because some of the common questions that are asked is mechatronics the same as mechanical? Is mechanical better than electrical? There are also a few questions around civil and chemical engineering, but maybe talk us through your route in getting a mechanical qualification. Is it BSc, BEng, BTech, and how did you go about selecting that?
Okay, so I'm a mechanical engineer, I think, as you rightfully mentioned. So I actually, mechanical engineering was always my first choice because I think I mentioned earlier the impact that things like trains, things like aeroplanes, that the impact that they had on me, and you know, there's a certain element of electrical in them, there's a certain element of electronics in them, and even to a certain extent structures, which is civil engineering. But I think to me, what stands out the most is the detail around the design of these systems, the detail around the way in which these systems interact with the external environments. If we're talking about fluid dynamics, you see it in aeroplane movements, you see it in the design of some of these aeroplanes. We're talking, some of these are trains, but they were talking about high-speed trains such as the Gautrain, how it was designed, the way it was designed, and what allows it to go at the speed that it runs at. So all of these things, it comes from the actual interaction from where you have that machine and the environment that is interacting with, and that comes from a full and detailed understanding of mechanical engineering. And that's what I liked about mechanical engineering, because it inspires all of these things. It inspires the design of a pen, it inspires the design of satellites, as well as the design of a Rolls-Royce 771 engine, or any engine for that matter. It all comes together through a mechanical engineering system. So that's what really pushed me towards mechanical engineering. And then going through the course itself, I realized that I think from a thermodynamics course, you know, I love thermodynamics. I love thermodynamics because that's where I started really learning more about how fluids react under certain pressures, under certain temperature characteristics. And then from that point, I went through the thermofluids, where I started understanding how jet engines work. I started understanding how a Mach 1 speed is achieved by an aeroplane. And then all of these things, they developed me into this person who really got fascinated by the course that I was studying. I fell in love with the course that I was studying. And from that point, I realized I had not made a mistake in what I was studying. And it was just a confirmation of what I originally thought about mechanical engineering, which was, it was awesome. And therefore, I carried through that to my work environment, to what I'm doing now. So yeah, mechanical engineering has always been the love of mine from the word go, and I think I'm still in love with it. I think a couple of years later from graduation.
Maybe just remind me, Tafadzwa, do you have a BSc in mechanical engineering, or you've got a master's in mechanical engineering?
So I because I graduated from University of Johannesburg, I have a Bachelor of Engineering in mechanical engineering. I'm currently working towards my master's degree in engineering.
Okay, that's awesome. So maybe this leads nicely to the next question. So the Department of Labor has said you are a person who is deemed competent. And a lot of guys tend to ask whether this is a qualification a person can get out of tertiary, or they can get out of school, or where they can study for it. And in some of the videos I share, that it's actually a certificate that you get via the department. So maybe from from you and your experience, what made you go for a GCC? What was the trigger?
So I think you mentioned that a lot of people, they come with a number of questions on how you can get to become a GCC engineer. So I think the first thing is you have to be able to I'd say you have to have some form of work experience. And then from that point, that means you cannot really just go from university straight to writing a GCC exam. So I'm talking from a purely engineer's perspective, right? So you have to have a certain number of a certain number of years of experience in maintenance or in operating the machines, and then you go and register. From that point, it's quite an affordable fee. The last time I did it, it was affordable. So yeah, I went that whole yeah, I went through that, and then so the thinking behind it for me was by virtue of the name, it mentions something about competency. So I'm a person who likes to think of myself as a competent human being, and on top of that, a competent engineer. This is a career that I chose because I felt like I had something meaningful to add to the world. I had something meaningful to add as an engineer to any place I was working in. And that means I feel good knowing that I'm competent, and that's the whole perspective of the GCC for me. Over and above that, you realize that immediately, especially when you are in maintenance, you realize that you have a duty not only to yourself or other artisans that you're working with or that are reporting to you. You have a duty over and above that to the people that are operating these machines. You have a duty to everyone that's working within a particular site, and then that comes through understanding your role either as an electrical engineer or as a mechanical engineer, and therefore I wanted to be that human being that I would not stand by, or I wanted to be that engineer where I wouldn't stand by and still see that an operator or an artisan is doing something that might possibly hurt him, while I'm just sitting there thinking someone else is going to resolve the problem. And I am an engineer who supposedly understands how these machines are designed, how these machines are run, how these machines are supposed to be maintained, and how these machines can prevent how we can prevent the any harm that might be before a person who is working with these machines. And therefore, that came to me having to look for some form of a certification. I could have gone for the PR-Eng or the GCC, but for me, it was the GCC because it really confirmed what I've always wanted. I've always wanted to be a competent engineer, and the GCC really fit nicely into that perspective of how do I, as an engineer, play a critical role in the safety of the plant, as well as how do I confirm myself as a knowledgeable engineer at the end of the day. And that's how I came to the GCC as the right choice for me.
Oh, wow. Thanks for sharing that. And maybe through your experience, the one question is, how do you apply for the GCC? So how did you go about, you got your engineering qualification, you got your years of experience. How does one apply, or how did you apply, and how did you register to sit for the exams?
Okay, so I was in KZN, so I got my letter. I'm not sure how they call what they call these letters. I think they call them different areas. So it could be a letter of sobriety or a letter of confirmation to say actually you've been working in this plant for 2-3 years, and this person was actually involved in the maintenance of this particular set of machines, and they're also attesting to your behavior and your attitude as a human being as well as a worker, and in my case as an engineer as well, to say this person is actually of sound mind, sound attitude, a person who is invested in engineering as a profession. So I got my letter, and then I managed to approach at Tvet College. It was I think Coastal Tvet College. And then I don't quite remember the amount that I paid for that registration, but yeah, I just remember I managed to register for the June exam, and that was in November the year before. And then I knew that okay, I applied for my candidature to write the exam in June, and with that came a number of I would say modules that I had to study. So before you even start studying, you need to know that you have set yourself a date. You understand you're going to be writing in June. You understand you're going to be writing in November, and then give yourself some time. I gave myself 7-8 months, I think, to be able to grasp the entire syllabus, whether it's OSH as well as the factories exam itself. So, I could have just rested on my laurels and say, actually, hey, I managed to get 80% average in my final year at varsity, so I should be able to just, push through and pass. But I think you'll be doing yourself a disservice if you do that, because most people, I've actually said with a number of people who say, actually, hey, I'm not going to read for this. What I'm just going to do is go and write and then take my chance. It happens. I think I sat down with like 6 people, 6-7 people that were telling me that, and then I said, well, you can try, but yeah, you're gonna have to rewrite again. But yeah, so I did that. I think over 6 months I was studying day in, day out. I was writing notes for both exams. I wrote both exams at the same time. And I think that that 6-month period really it benefited me to a very large extent, because I was also studying for my MBA at that same time. So both of them needed that sort of balancing before I went to write in June. So yeah, I think that's just about how I got to the exam room in June.
So it's very few people that go and tackle both exams in the same month, because you're given 3 years to write either in June or in November, right? And you went straight for it. The first month that was available, the June month, you wrote both exams. How did you study or prepare? I think you mentioned that you also had other priorities like the MBA that you were studying for. Maybe share some of the practical tips or some of the methods that you used, or some of the tools maybe that you used to study for and prepare for your exams. And I assume you passed first time.
Well, I think we'll get to that, but yeah, so I after I got my acceptance. So I think one part that we have to make clear is you have to get your acceptance first from Department of Labor to say, actually, now you've registered for these 2 exams. You can prepare yourself to go and write in the next exam period. So I got my acceptance in during that time, I think October, November. And then from that point, I realized I had around 6-7 months to prepare. So for me, like I said, I registered for both of them. So I started just like handling both of them at the same time. So I started with, I would say this week I'm only focusing on the OSH Act. Next week I'm focusing on the plant exam. So I was very fortunate to afford the workbook by Palucraft. So that's one thing that I used extensively, right? Over and above our normal friend Google. But that's one thing that I really used extensively. So the workbook, what I liked about the workbook is it managed to break down all of these different areas that you're going to be facing in the exam into manageable components, chapter by chapter. If you're talking about the plant exam itself, so it was divided into different areas. So I realized that today or this week, I'm only going to be focusing on compressors. I would just attack compressors like from Monday to Friday. After work at night, I would just make sure that from 9 to 12 midnight, I was working on compressors for that week. And then the next week, I'm working on transformers. I'll just do transformers. While I was also writing my own notes as well. Over and above that workbook, I was writing my own notes. So there were some things, for example, because I'm mechanical, electrical, sometimes there were some things that I thought I knew, but you realize really you don't know. So I would write a lot of notes on those things. So if we're talking about DC motors, AC motors, in that point, also talking about nozzles. So I covered everything. So I'm not really a risk taker when it comes to the exams. I'm a person who covers everything, like from A to Z. I realized, so there were some people that were actually telling me, hey, I just studied for 3-4 things. I studied boilers, I studied this and this and this, and then I went and wrote. So for me, I was like, okay, well, that's good for you, but I'm gonna read everything. So I did actually. So I read everything end to end. I think I would be lying if I say some of these things I did not claim, but because I did. So there were some formulas I realized. So there were some formulas that you are never going to get right in the exam. So if they give you some formulas, especially in the plant exam, it's formulas that you normally are not going to use, right? So most of the useful formulas, you have to come up with them. So one of the things, I would say one of the things that really made the difference for me in the plant exam was understanding all my formulas. So my notes were mostly formulas, right? From page 1 to the last page, my notes were formulas. So when I'm bored, right? When I'm bored on a Saturday, I'd go to a mall, and then I'd go and sit in a mall for 3 hours cramming my formulas, right? That's how I was doing it, right? So it's some people would say it's an unconventional way of studying, but for me that's what worked, right? I would go, and I'm a person who thrives when I'm sitting in an environment where there is some form of human movement, and I just block it out, and then I study my notes. So that's how I went through my entire syllabus for plant exam. I did the same for the OSHA Act as well. During the same period, for those 6-7 months, I was actually sitting down on a Saturday, Sunday. I'd go to the beach as an example and just sit on a chair and then just start reading my OSHA Act from A to Z.
Wow.
I also got that book from Palucraft as well, which was quite helpful. So over and above the workbook, I managed to get past exam papers from Palucraft, and then that came. But for me, I started using that towards the end. I started using that, I think 2-3 months before, because I realized after my workbook, right, I had written all the formulas, I'd written all the notes I could possibly write for the OSHA Act and for the plant exam, and I understood all the formulas. I would be lying if I say I didn't dream of some of these formulas at night, because I did. Honestly, I would just wake up sometimes in the morning at 5 and then just start writing formulas just to know that I know them. That's how I did it. And yeah, it came to exam time. Like I mentioned, I think I was writing my MBA as well. I think that time I wrote close to 11 exams that June. And yeah, I managed to pass. I managed to pass. I think I passed one, and then I got 49% for the for the other one, right?
Close.
Yeah. So, and funny thing is, when I came out of that exam, I felt like I got 80%. I think it was the plant exam. I felt like I got 80%, and I was so devastated to see 49%. I was like, no way, no way. And I didn't even think twice. When I got my results, I went to Absa Bank. I went to pay the remark fee. I came back. Yes, I came back 30 minutes later. I said, this is my remark application. Just send it. I don't want to sit with it because I don't believe I got this mark. And then, yeah, 2 months later, Coastal College calls me and they said, actually, you passed. So
they found the 1% for you.
they actually found more than one. They found 3. So yeah, I didn't have to write it again. So that's how much I believed in what I had studied. That's how much I believed in some of the effort that I had put in both exams, and it paid off. I never had to sit down twice for those exams. I sat down once to write, and I'm glad it worked out. I'm glad I passed.
Wow, thanks for sharing that experience. You know what? You answered a couple of the questions, because the one question was, what materials did you use? And in a lot of what you said, I think Palucraft, who I quote quite a lot on my channel as well. In fact, I went to the same tertiary as one of the owners of Palucraft. And I think it's probably one of the organizations that's taken quite a strong stance at trying to support individuals with their GCC. So you've also shared that their material is actually quite good quality and has been effective. So thanks for sharing that. And you also shared the approach that you use to ensure that you pass. So I think there's one tip there for individuals. Don't give up if you get a fail mark, because if you really believe that you've passed, there is an opportunity to ask for a remark. Obviously, it does come at somewhat of a fee. But the one aspect that I think you've shared, Taf, quite a lot is it does take a lot of sacrifice. So whether it's during the day, during the night, on the beach, in the mall, you fully immerse yourself to study quite hard and make sure that you put the work in for you to get the result. There are 2 more questions. I think the second last one is, look, now that you've passed, probably not so much of a value-adding question, but you never know. If there's anything that you would do differently now, say you're still that fresh engineer with experience now getting your acceptance letter, what would you do differently, if anything?
I'll say I wouldn't do a lot of things differently, because it was, I'd say it was one of those career defining moments for me, but maybe I would try and I don't know, just read a little more to avoid that remark. Because so when it came, it was kind of a shock for me because I had never failed from primary school to that point. That's when I received a fail for the first time, and that's why it was so difficult for me to accept it. That's why I was like, I'm not even gonna negotiate. I'm just gonna go for a remark, and then I passed. So I think I would say, retrospectively, just reading a little more, but I think I did a lot of work to make sure that I passed it without having to write again. So don't try and I'd say scope out what's gonna come, what came in the previous year, what's gonna come this year. For some people, maybe it has worked. I generally don't. I don't encourage it. I would say put in the work, right? Put in the work, understand your pumps, understand your motors, understand your transformers and boilers, and to a very good extent, compressors and the OSH Act, and you certainly do well. But put in the work, right? Put in the work day in, day out. When I sat in there, by the way, I think I was one of the youngest people that sat in that room, and that shows you how difficult it can be to pass this, right? I sat in there as one of the youngest people, and I was filled with joy. I didn't have any fear. I was filled with joy because, first of all, it was just a big thing for me to be sitting there with some of these, seasoned veterans. We're discussing with them where they were working. Some of them had 20, 25 years experience. And I was sitting there and I'm thinking, wow, this guy, he's been through the mill, wherever he's working, he's gone through the mill to get to this point. And with me, I had studied a lot, so I also had that faith in myself to say, hey, I'm gonna give it my best, and then when I sat in there, I actually never left any of those 2 exams feeling like I failed. I felt like this went quite well, and that can only come from studying. So my advice would be just study.
And then maybe the last question: what would be your advice to engineers like yourself who are looking to get the GCC?
Yeah, so I'd say the first thing, understand what you have to achieve, right? Understand what's standing in front of you, because as most people, if you don't understand where the goal is, you can forget about getting there, right? You can forget about getting there from the word go. Understand what you want to achieve, specifically from a GCC perspective. Understand there's no shortcuts, right? You want to be a GCC engineer, and understand what it takes in terms of number of years of experience. There's a lot of content. I think you, Zanele, you have also put up a lot of content on how you can register for that acceptance letter to say you can actually sit for the GCC exams, either OSH or plant or both of them. So you already know that, okay, I want to be a GCC engineer. I have my number of experience. I have the right experience. You could be an artisan, or you could be a technician. You have your subjects, already lined up, you have passed, and then you identify your center. Most of these are Tvet colleges. Identify your center, right? And then know very well. And the good thing is they give you this I would say, like a big piece of paper that says your exam is on the 6th of November. So you won't forget. I would say just put it next to where you sleep so that you see it every day, and then understand what your scope of work is. Like, your scope of work is going to be quite huge, quite exhausting. So if you try and attack all of that from the word go, it's going to be exhausting. It's also going to be quite overwhelming. So you've registered, you've received the acceptance letter, you understand your modules that you need to study, and you study for them extensively. Day in, day out, give yourself time, if it means you need a year, take a year. You understand yourself better than anyone. If you need 2 years, take your 2 years. If it means you need to study, you need to write for one this sitting and the other one in the next sitting, do that. You understand yourself. I would say there's no one size fits all. So understand yourself, understand your capability, and then put in the work. And ultimately, the results will come for themselves. It could be either in the GCC area where this applies, as well as in a professional area as an engineer or an artisan or a technician.
Tafadzwa, thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I think especially for some individuals that don't find it so easy to find information on the internet, or not so sure where to find out, or don't have those networks and connections to ask someone who's walked the journey, and you've actually opened up quite a couple of avenues, because number one, yes, there are individuals that have different perspectives and experiences, but just by sharing yours, one of the biggest things that I do believe that it can help at least one person. And even if it helps at least one person, I think we would have done an awesome job. So thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I think you shared at the start of the video that your factory is running 24/7. So you probably have individuals and things weighing heavy on your head.
Yeah, no, that's correct.
And thank you so much for contributing to someone's development. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Zanele, and thank you, viewers, for this opportunity. And if, like you mentioned, if we are able to help someone, even that one person, and I think we would have done ourselves as well as our communities a favor in that regard. So I'm happy to help anytime.
Thank you so much. Shap.
Thank you.